Super sponsor, Argos Health. Welcome to this episode of Super Sponsors. Our guest this week is Kirby Yawn from Argos. How are you doing, Kirby?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to.
My name's Kirby Yawn. Thanks for the introduction, Max. I'm with Argos Health, our Senior Vice President of Solution Strategies. I live and work in Augusta, Georgia. We have now 4 offices nationwide here in Augusta, Hudson, Ohio, Glendale, Arizona, and just outside of Chicago, Illinois. So a growing business and happy to be a part of Georgia HFMA.
So tell us about how Argos has been doing business-wise through this pandemic, and how have you pivoted during these last couple of months?
So probably most folks that are watching, I'll just give a little brief overview. We have 4 core service lines and actually just added a 5th. We do complex claims, and to us, complex claims are third-party liability, motor vehicle accident, workers' compensation, Veterans Affairs, out-of-state Medicaid claims, and now, as of February 1st, what we're calling ERISA appeals. So we've been growing, we've been expanding. So when you asked me to be a part of this, I started thinking about, well, how did we pivot as a company with COVID? And it was very interesting to me that coming up on the March 10th, 11 timeframe will be the 1-year anniversary of a pretty critical conversation we had as a company. And interestingly enough, I specifically remember the conversation because I was in the Starbucks parking lot in Macon, Georgia, on my way to Columbus, Georgia, for the Georgia HFMA event that took place March 10th and 11th. I was due to speak, I think it was on the 10th at 3:30 p.m. I feel like that was my time. But I had stopped in Macon on my way, grab a cup of coffee, and we had a what I'll call like a COVID planning corporate call. We were discussing, what's been released in the media, what's going on with where is the virus, has it left Washington state, blah, 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 all that, and what we were going to do. And in that phone call, we were talking about, we felt the need to shift to a complete remote workforce was coming. We just didn't know when. And we were having a discussion around what sort of capital purchases we would have to make, et cetera, et cetera. And when I hung up that call and pulled out of the Starbucks parking lot, we agreed we would place an order for 150 Chromebooks that afternoon so that all of our employees at the time, we were at like 150 and now we're, I think, a little over 200. But we knew we needed all 150 employees to be able to potentially walk out of work one day and open up a computer and work from home the next. That's a little dramatic, but that was kind of the gist of our call. Now, most of our workforce is fully remote. So it's kind of interesting that you ask, how did we pivot? We went from a complete in-office workforce to now I don't know what the exact numbers are, but let's just call it a 50% remote workforce. And it was almost a year ago to the day on the way to a Georgia HFMA event where that decision was kind of realized and made. So interesting timing.
Now, in your line of business, there is a lot of documentation, a lot of paperwork, and a lot of faxing. How did you handle that?
Yeah. Well, luckily, we've got some experience on our senior management team where they came from more of a remote work environment than we were doing. So we leaned on them heavily. And a lot of that faxing now luckily can take place electronically. So you're not necessarily feeding the machine as much as you are teeing up your documents all within the computer, and then you're sending it out over all the e-fax. So, fortunately, we had some folks with just a lot of experience that were able to say, well, this is what we've done in the past, and then we were able to adapt it to what worked well for us.
How has Georgia HFMA supported you or has been of help with your continual efforts to market your services and things like that?
You hear it over and over again, but I think it is important, and maybe the reason you hear it over and over again is because it is so important, but when you think about the relationship aspect, I know we simply just appreciate the fact that Georgia HFMA said, well, let's think outside the box. Let's figure out what we can do to get, vendors like me back in front of people, just so that if anything, we get the connection. Hey, they're still out there because we hadn't been seeing people for a year now. So, hats off to Georgia HFMA for trying to say, let's do something a little different. Let's approach this from a different angle. Let's make it fun, exciting, and let's not make it very businessy. Let's just make it where we all start to remember, hey, what, or hey, guess what? There's still the people out there that make up our chapter. So I think it's great. Yeah, here's another Georgia HFMA story. I think the first HFMA, and specifically Georgia HFMA conference we spoke at, where we presented, we did an early riser session in Savannah, Georgia, spring 2010. And when we did that, early riser session, 7:30 a.m. start time, you got to do something to try to get some people, a little bit pepped up. So we liked some cartoons, and we pulled this one Far Side cartoon, Gary Larson. I love the guy. And so you can always seem to find a Far Side cartoon from back in the day that relates to what you're going through. We found this one where, if you know anything about Far Side cartoons, he obviously used drawings of the devil a pretty good bit, but he's got the devil poking this one guy in the back. And the guy he's poking in the back has two doors in front of him. And one door says, damned if you do and damned if you don't. So our topic of conversation, we thought it was a good icebreaker, because that seems to be what you're faced with when you deal with some of our claims. And so that made its way into the mix. Spring 2010, that same slide has never left my presentation deck for in-person or webinar or anything, because since then, it's never gone away. Like it always seems in rev cycle, when you're talking about healthcare, that those two doors seem to present themselves a lot. So it's been the icebreaker ever since then. We're on an 11-year anniversary now. So there's a little, to speak to longevity, that's some longevity there in just a slide presentation.
Oh, I can definitely see that. You're right. Decisions made in healthcare, damned you do, damned you don't. That's hilarious. So thank you very much, Kirby. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate your continual support and sponsorship of Georgia HFMA.
Yeah, thank y'all very much. See you in May.
Super sponsor, Argos Health.